Hi, it's good to see you here, and we are very excited to take the next 20 minutes a session with you. So, with that, hi, this is Devika from the Next Genius Foundation, and today we'll interact with Yash from Boston College. So, please feel free to go ahead, introduce yourself, which school and curriculum you come from, and which year you are at Boston right now.
Yeah, so I was born in Mumbai. I'm from Mumbai. I studied at Opera International School in Mumbai and I did the IBDP. I'm a sophomore and I'm a sophomore at Boston College.
Okay, perfect. So, moving ahead, would you like to tell us about what major have you opted at Boston and why that major?
Yeah, so I'm doing a Bachelor of Science in Management with concentrations in economics and information systems. I applied to all my colleges knowing I wanted to study economics. I applied to BC specifically with like a focus in management because BC has a good business school and it has a lot of good opportunities to go into like financial industries like banks, that sort of stuff. So I knew that I would have the advantage of being part of a business school and get that experience and get those resources while still studying the subjects I like. And then information systems, I took a class at BC that I really liked, and so I decided to pursue that concentration as well.
Great. We are very curious to know that why Boston and how did you get to Boston?
Yeah, I mean, of all the colleges I got into, it was the best one. That's kind of like the decision you have to make at the end of the day. Like, of your acceptances, which one do you like the most? Boston College really stood out to me. One was because, like I said, I wanted to go into business, and I knew that BC, especially the School of Management, has a really good reputation amongst like banks, Wall Street, that those sort of companies. So I felt that coming to Boston College, coming to BC would prep me and really set me up for the years after college because it has this really strong alumni network, has connections with big banks and stuff like that. So I thought that would be the best option for me considering what my career goals were beyond college.
All right, great. With that, would you like to highlight, what according to you is a good fit, for Boston, and what according to you is not a good fit for Boston?
I think that's a tough question to kind of answer because like with a lot of colleges, there's no like right fit, especially in the US. Like they don't really look for a specific type of person, the thing with BC, especially, they're like looking for like well-rounded people. They care about who you are as a whole. So it's hard to say like, if you're a certain kind of person, you're not going to fit into BC because you tend to find the people you want to find. You find your way at the college. But I mean, I guess if one thing, it's BC is a very like work hard, play hard kind of environment to some extent, but it doesn't have a Greek life. So if you're looking at like Greek life and like frats, you're not going to find that at BC. But it's hard to say that who's not the right person for BC or for any college in particular, because especially in the US, they're not looking for a certain type of person. It's like they're looking for a range of people.
All right. Would you like to mention about your high school grades, test scores, and
Yeah, sure. So I did the IBDP. I got a 41 on 45 overall. I did math, physics, eco, HL, and then uh, Spanish, language and literature, and global politics as my SLs.
right? And what were your subjects like?
What do you mean? Like,
Like what subjects did you take in your high school?
yeah, so those are the subjects I took: math, physics, eco,
Okay.
HL, and the SLs were the ones I took for IBDP.
All right, great. So coming back to Boston, so what did your college profile look like? What was in it that you got into Boston?
Wait, you have to repeat that. You kind of dropped off for a second.
Yeah, I repeat. What was like on your college profile that got you into Boston?
That's hard to say. I can't like say like that there was one thing in particular that got me in, especially with the US. There's so many like elements to your application that's hard to say that yes, that's the one thing that got me in. I think with BC, you need a strong like with any college, you need a strong academic background. You need good test results. You need good academic performance throughout high school. That's obviously the most important thing. But the thing with BC is that, especially their mission statement, they're kind of looking for people that are beyond just like their major. Like if the first thing you tell about yourself is that I am an economic student, that's not really what they're looking for. I'd say they're looking for like, more than just what your major is. So like on my essays, I spoke about my some stuff about my childhood. Like I lived a big part of my life outside of India, so I spoke about that, and spoke about how that made me like this like holistic, well-rounded person. So I think maybe that's what got me into BC, strong academic performance, but also just speaking about how I'm just more than just academics.
Right, perfect. So do also tell us about, what did you write your main CAUCAS essay about?
Yeah, oh my God, I'm struggling to remember exactly, but I think I wrote about, like I said, I was born in Mumbai, but then lived in Egypt, lived in London. So I kind of spoke about living in all these different countries, how growing up in India, but then living in Egypt, but then living in London, and all those experiences kind of shaped me to the person I was, and like how that made me open-minded, well-rounded, accepting of other cultures. And that's what I focus on in my main common app essay. Yeah.
All right, that suffices the question. So, there are a couple of questions for you in the Q&A feature, and I would like to go ahead with few of them. So, Deborah asks so that what is student life like, at BC?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think student life is really what you make of it. It's how you decide to get involved, how you decide to get involved with the community. The thing with BC kids in general is that a lot of them are very passionate about being involved in the community. Everyone will join some sort of club, whether that's like a volunteer club, a business club, an a cappella group, a dance group, whatever. We don't have Greek life at BC, so like your social life kind of comes from these extracurricular clubs that you do. So like I'm in the debate club, I'm in a part of this leadership program, and through those kind of things, those are the friends I've made. That's how I've made my friends. Student life kind of varies. There's some people who love to go out every day, and you'll find the people who love to go out, go into the city, travel a lot. There's some people who prefer to hang out with just a small amount of people. But I think like the core thing about student life at BC is just the clubs you get involved in, and those are like that's basically your social life at the end of the day. Like at the beginning of the year, there's this huge club fair, and there's like I think 200 clubs on campus. You go, you just sign up to a bunch of random ones. You find the ones that interest you, you join those, you become involved in them, and that kind of just becomes you get to meet people that way. You get to that kind of just becomes your social life through that aspect.
Perfect. Vidit asks that, what did you do for your YS essay for BC?
My what essay?
Why us essay?
Oh, why? Okay, why BC? Actually, the BC didn't have a why us essay. Like I forget the essay prompts, but they didn't ask me like why I'm applying to BC. But I can speak about why I chose BC at the end. Again, a little bit. It's at the end of the day, like BC. What stood out to me was the fact that I'll be going to a business school that has a really good reputation with like financial institutions, banks. I knew that I'd be set up in a really good way to start my career beyond that because there's a really strong alumni network. Something that I found at least during my time at BC was that alumni from BC really care about current BC kids. So like I've reached out to alumni who graduated a couple years ago through LinkedIn, and they've been more than happy to speak to me, help me understand how I can plan my career. A lot of them work in like investment banks, so I spoke to them about what did you do during your time at BC, how can I set myself up? Can you connect me with someone else? That kind of stuff. And they all seem to really care about me, even though they didn't know me at all. So I guess a big thing would be in terms of why BC was that I knew would set me up for my career beyond college, but also the fact that, yeah, it was the main thing was just it would just set me up beyond the time. But one thing about BC as well is that we have a core curriculum. I think most colleges will have that, but BC's is really, really extensive because it started out as a liberal arts university. It's not anymore, but it did before. So like you'll do a lot of classes on like um, history, philosophy, theology, those kind of classes. And that kind of interested me because I knew that maybe I might want to do, add another major, maybe like a history major or a minor. And I just didn't know what I wanted to do. So like I knew I'd be taking these classes that would be interesting and maybe help me explore like another avenue in terms of academics. So that's why BC stood out to me.
Amazing. That was very interesting to know about. So Julie asks that, it's like she believes that, the environment at BC is relatively very competitive. So do you believe that?
I mean, not really. At least in my experience, I haven't felt that way. BC kids are very intelligent, pretty successful. All of them are driven, but it's not like a cutthroat kind of environment where you're trying to beat the other person. Um, yeah, it's not been that my experience at all. At least like through like the business class and the core curriculum classes I've taken, it's just not been that atmosphere at all. A lot of kids are super friendly, super willing to talk to you, become your friend, or just like have a conversation. Professors also don't try and create an environment that's overly competitive where you're like just trying to beat the other person, trying to do the best. They try to push you and try to be as the best you can be, but there's a lot of emphasis on collaborating with other students, especially in like business classes. You'll be doing group projects a lot. Like pretty much every class I've taken in from my management degree has had a group project component involved. So like it's not a cutthroat environment at all.
I hope Julie would have felt a little lighter after hearing that. All right. So would you like to share, talk in a glimpse about your extracurriculars?
Yeah, so my extracurriculars, I think, when I came in, I spoke to a couple of like upperclassmen and kind of asked them, what's a good, how should I really get involved? And all of them, extracurriculars are your main way to get involved on campus. And they kind of like said like, 2 to 3 clubs is like a good number to strike. So one thing I'm involved in is like Big Brothers, Big Sisters of Eastern Massachusetts, which is a volunteer organization that I'm a part of. So like, I basically mentor and mentor a younger child who comes from like an underprivileged background. That's like one service thing that I'm doing at BC because I came in knowing I wanted to do some service, some kind of charity work when I came here. Then one thing I mentioned was like a debate club that I'm a part of, and that's very low key. It's not a lot of effort at all. It's like meetings once a week for an hour, and then sometimes I'll participate in debates with like students from all across the U.S. So we have like tournaments at BU, Northeastern, Tufts, basically across like the Northeast, and that's like a cool way to get to know other people because it's low key affair. The club is like they're trying to make it a more social thing rather than like learn how to debate and learn how to practice. It's more like getting to know other people. So that's been a good way to just get to know other people, get involved with the club. And then last year I was involved in a leadership program where I lived in a house with like 20 other kids who were part of the program. And that was a really cool experience because I got though that's how I met like my closest friends. Like my roommate currently was my roommate last year, and that's how I kind of made my social circle from that activity.
That's very exciting and very interesting to know about. Also, Julie wants to ask that, what were like talking about challenges? What kind of challenges do you face during your
Sorry, during my what? That last part cut out.
during your first year?
Uh, yeah, I think, the first year is just kind of getting used to the fact that you're in a different country altogether, especially if you've never lived abroad or been to the US. That culture shift can be kind of different, can be kind of tough for a lot of kids. It wasn't that bad for me, but there were times when obviously I felt a little homesick, especially the first few weeks. You're trying to make new friends. You're not really comfortable with the friends you've made just yet, as opposed to like high school where you've known, your closest friend for 5 years, but like the first couple of weeks, you don't have a best friend. You don't have that close friend. You have friends, but you don't have like someone who you like trust that much. So that was like a little bit of a challenge, but a lot of colleges and especially BC like acknowledge the fact that this is like a tough transition for you and that everyone's kind of going through this process. So like before, at least before COVID, like they would hold a lot of like events and stuff where they kind of that were like targeted towards the freshmen. So it'd be like a freshman kind of mixer, or like they had this like giant like not party carnival kind of thing in one of the buildings for all the freshmen, and you got to go just like meet other freshmen. You just like you'd be waiting in line for something and you just talk to someone and get to know them from that. So like at least like BC kind of acknowledges the fact that your first year you are transitioning to this new part of your life. It can be kind of difficult, it can be kind of daunting, kind of scary, so they do their best to kind of help you through that transition.
Right, absolutely agree. So with it asks that, so would you say that the core curriculum is essential to every BC student regardless of your major that you opt?
Yeah, everyone has to do it.
All right, perfect. With that, also, would you like to touch a little about testing? What kind about
Sorry, you're gonna have to repeat that question again. I just got out. I'm sorry.
Can you talk a little about standardized testing that BC requires?
Yeah, I think at least when I applied, it was required to give your SAT or ACT score. I think now because of like COVID, they've become test optional. Uh, but I know that it's like at the look, SATs aren't going to be the end all be all if you're great. If you don't have a good SAT score, it's not going to make a difference. But that being said, the average SAT score I think at BC is fairly high. When I joined, I think it was like a 1430, and this year it was like a 1490 when they published the data. But again, because it was test optional, I think only kids who had high scores kind of submitted it. So I can't tell you, how stringent it is, but I can tell you like your SAT scores may be like 5% of your entire application at the end of the day. It's not a big deal. Don't fuss if you don't have a 1500 or like a 1400. I did well in my SATs, but like honestly, I don't think it made a big difference on my applications.
All right. Thank you, Yash. Thank you so much for answering to all our questions. And there are a few more for you in the Q&A feature below. So feel free to stay a little longer and type answers to those questions. Meanwhile, I would like to give it over to my colleague, Mr. Devesh Raj. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Superb. Thank you so much, Devika, and thank you, Yash, for answering all the questions here. And with that, we are